Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition used to look like this, but now with mods we can make it look like this. I wanted a different way to replay the original trilogy, but since I've always skipped out on the Definitive Edition for, well, obvious reasons, I wanted to see if it was possible to fix it with mods, and well, the results are actually pretty fantastic. I spent the past 2 days sifting through tons of mods and comparing all of them, and honestly it's completely changed my mind on this version. I used to be someone that hated this thing, but now this is 100% going to be the way that I play my next playthroughs of GTA, and it might have the same effect on you too. Here on Retro Renew, I create weekly videos exploring the many different ways that you can breathe new life into old classics, and today we try to fix Rockstar's worst remaster with mods, to see if we can finally have a bit more of a modern way to play the classic games. Also, I think you should fix that subscribe button for me to get fresh new retro gaming content delivered straight to your homepage. And also, whilst you're at it, help me reach 100k subs before GTA 6. These 3 classic GTA titles have been ported many times, and as is the case with a lot of Rockstar games before, they tend to just get more and more broken with each new version. And the Definitive Edition is by far one of the more fatal mistakes that they made. For anyone that is unaware of this version or has just been ignorant to the whole drama surrounding it when it first happened, I want to quickly recap, but also just take a trip down memory lane because I think it's really important to tell this story. So, the Definitive Edition is a remaster of the 3 GTA games. It was released on November 11th, 2021 for console and PC, and it outright replaced the originals, and I mean replaced. On all platforms now, you cannot buy the original games as they were released. That is unless you're willing to pay upwards of $80 these things are on key sites at the moment. The thing is, even if this was the most perfect and faithful remaster that would ever grace the earth, I still don't think it's right to replace the original. And I'm sure many of you see games as art nowadays, and it just makes no sense for a remaster, remake or repeat or port to ever replace that original piece of art. We are, however, in the worst timeline here because not only was it replaced, but it was replaced with this. Rockstar actually didn't make this though, it was Grove Street Games, and now it's perfectly normal for companies to outsource these remaster to, partnered companies, but in this instance it failed miserably. It's been a few years since this, and well, many of the issues have actually been fixed, which is great because this version, despite criticism, actually has some really nice modern features and actually looks good in some lighting thanks to the Unreal Engine. I think there's a lot here that was actually done right, and I mean there's no fan project that really comes close to this level of a visual upgrade. Having the tools available to them to port this to the Unreal Engine really did make a big difference, and I think it would just be ignorant for me to ignore the fact that there are a lot of amazing things about this Definitive Edition outside of the obvious downsides. It's not perfect though, and before we get too ahead of ourselves changing anything major, I first want to go through just one utility mod that I installed, and that's the Fusion Fix by ThirteenAG. This isn't fun or interesting, but it is important. This fixes stuff like the bugged mouse movement, which just feels awful by default, and it also allows quick saving. You just hit F5 and it will save your game. Very, very useful in this sort of thing, especially when you fail a mission and you go right back to the start. And with that installed, then I got onto tackling the visuals because that's the main gripe I have with this remaster. Better LOD config is an absolute must here before you see these extremely ugly low LOD detail buildings, and there's just really no point in not having this. I saw no performance decrease at all when using it, and it just made the game way more pleasant to look out in the distance. Then I set everything to the max in the graphics settings. I didn't see anything major that changed the visuals that much. I got really high FPS with max graphics settings here. It's also worth noting about FPS that you should still technically cap to 60. If you don't cap to 60, I noticed straight away that the GTA FPS bugs were still there. I'm not sure if they're all there, but for example in GTA 3 you can outright just push vehicles if you uncap the FPS, whereas capping it to 60 you cannot do that. There's also DLSS, but I really didn't see the need in this. This game runs extremely well now with the latest update, so unless you really are fighting for performance, it's not really necessary. The only sad thing is the anti-aliasing options. These are kind of normal for these modern games, but you have FXAA and TAA, which is essentially like asking, do you want your image to be blurred and therefore lose overall detail, or smudged with ghosting on top? Adding something like MSAA at a driver level or via reshade would be the ideal way to avoid this if you want to take it that step further, or you could actually use DLSS at its best option, as that kind of acts like an anti-aliasing. That would definitely look better. The only other thing I need to note is classic lighting option. This was something that was added after the fact, as many people criticize these games as just looking nothing like the original. They almost have like one of those realistic mods applied that you see everywhere that just totally take the soul out of the original vibe. I tried out a mod called Trilogy GFX, which is kind of like classic lighting before it was introduced. It really improves the overall colours and lighting, bringing it much closer to the original. But the thing is, if you just switch classic lighting on, I think this looks even more faithful. Therefore, I just uninstalled the mod and kept classic lighting, but still, here are the comparisons so that you can kind of make your own mind up, because I can see a point in why you would use Trilogy GFX, to be honest. It's way better than default, that's for sure. Now, with the graphics set to how I wanted them, I overhauled all the game's textures via a mod called RoSA Evolved. Anyone that is familiar with GTA modding is going to straight away recognize that name, as this has been around since 2009, I believe. It was picked up in 2021 and it was converted to the definitive edition. The biggest change that I noticed with this was definitely the murals that you see around the game. They go from complete AI slop to stunning recreations. It's really no surprise that a fan-made project that's been around this long looks better than something made in, you know, a corporate setting, but it still doesn't make it any less awesome to see this level of dedication. The pizza sign here actually looks like wood now, rather than its cartoony appearance of before, and just in general, things carry a more gritty tone that I just think is way more faithful to the original game. This is of course only for San Andreas. There wasn't anything really stand out for the other two games, but there was something called GTA 3 Xbox textures, which, as the name implies, replaces some of the textures with those from the Xbox version. These look better, especially the signage again. I notice a trend really with these versions in that signs, or just anything really with words on it, really stick out. They have mostly been replaced with just super generic fonts and shapes, so going back to the original, no matter how pixelated they are, is always going to look better in my opinion. Again, here with the car liveries in San Andreas, the upscaling here just looks absolutely horrendous, but with a mod called Proper Vehicle Retex, that does it for this vehicle and many of the others in the game as well. This, similar to RoSA, is an old project dating back to 2015, and it's been ported here in the definitive edition again. Interiors also look way better now, but I didn't manage to actually see the difference here. There are some comparisons on the site though. In game, obviously you don't really see the interiors that much. That is, unless you get the first person view in Cars mod. You can enable this by pressing P, and it's a super basic implementation, but a really fun new way to cruise around the city nonetheless. Now let's continue our journey into fixing mistakes, because the pictures around CJ's house look like they've been picked at random, so this makes them more fit the game's lore. There's also one called Anachronism Fixes, which does a similar thing in correcting many of the continuity errors around this game. The original game uses a lot of stuff from GTA 5, which takes place in 2013. So you get things like this smartphone, for example, being in the crack house seen on the mod page. This changed a lot of stuff, but a lot of stuff that was changed is just not safe to show here on YouTube. So this is the only comparison that I can really show. And even that I've had to censor. I don't have to censor this one though. This changes the graffiti in the game, because by default it just looks like it's made with a marker. So HD tags makes it look like it's actually been sprayed from a spray can with paint running down some of the letters. The last small detail I changed for the visuals were fixing the really weird eyes the characters have. I can't quite pinpoint why these characters just look so uncanny, but the eyes are definitely one thing that make a huge difference. Before, they were cartoony, and in many cases were kind of shaded red, kind of like they were high or something. Whereas now with realistic eyes, well, they're more realistic. I think this subtle change makes a huge difference. Now onto bigger overhauls, Zen Models completely reimagines objects like these payphones here. Now they feature much more complexity in their shape and have added details that really do benefit from the new Unreal Engine lighting. He's done this kind of overhaul to basically a bunch of objects all around the whole map. The big thing that needs fixing besides this though is of course the characters, and luckily there's an entire pack that fixes many of the standout worst ones. However, there's not one that completely overhauls every single one of them. This is called BRONXBX fixes, and it makes changes across all 3 games, but for example here in Vice City, it makes Ken look like less of an actual Ken doll, and gave Kent Paul much needed definition in his face. For the main characters, I went with Not DoctorMike's mod for Claude in GTA 3, as well as Tommy in Vice City. I definitely prefer the Claude one over the Tommy one. I still think Tommy looks a bit weird, but nonetheless they are improvements over the original. Then for San Andreas, I think proper player Retex is definitely the standout one here, which does wonders at removing that extremely plastic, creepy look from CJ. Then lastly, I gave Denise a much needed makeover because by far she is the worst of the bunch. I said the game looks like The Sims earlier, but this is honestly an insult to The Sims. Now she looks so much more like an actual human, and that's really the best thing I can say about this mod. Moving away from the characters, the Gunflash muzzle is just really weird here. It's like a PNG of a flash placed at the barrel, but kind of on a 2D plane, so it makes it look super flat. Improving it with this mod, simply called Improved Gunflash Muzzle, fixes that very issue right up. Lastly, for visuals, I thought that the wasted and busted animations that you see were absolutely terrible in this version, but instead of just outright removing the cheap blood overlay, I decided to use this mod which aims to improve it instead of remove it and keeps some of the character of it. Now for audio, all I did was restore the radio stations that were removed, because despite this being called a definitive edition, it doesn't actually feature all of the content from the original. Then for user interface, I got classic fonts to bring back the original font for all 3 games. Then I did the similar thing for the radar, map, and icons with the mod Classic Radar and other radar tweaks. This just makes it match more closely to the original in color, and it does the same for the maps as well. Then it also swaps out the mobile looking icons for the originals, which I much prefer. And lastly, it makes the GPS navigation lines more respective to the color of the game. So green for 3, blue for Vice City, and red for San Andreas. It also fixes many of the issues with the radar, like not being able to waypoint correctly over some of the icons. And this entire mod is completely modular, so you install each part of it separately. This means that you can do stuff like, say, keep the old icons but not the waypoint color. You can basically do whatever you want here. What I ended up with was basically the whole package, but I kept the 3D map instead of switching to the 2D map. The last finishing detail that I did was added a mod to make the logos for the definitive edition, the ones that you see during loading screens. For some reason they forgot to change those ones. And there you have it. I think we've pretty much created a perfect definitive edition here, and it's really worth me pointing out that if you want to play this game, just play the original, to be honest. Like if you're a new player, just go and play it on, say, an emulator if you're on PC, or the original hardware, or even via some of the ports that were out there. This is way more suited towards someone like me that's played the original tons of times and wants something new that isn't totally broken like it once was. Similarly though to a lot of things that are discussed on this channel, it's really just about having options to play how you want to play, and it's clear from checking out these mods that you can create quite the compelling remaster here. It's still kinda crazy that we're remastering a remaster, but honestly that's just the state of things nowadays. On the bright side though, in its current state, just completely default with no mods, I can honestly see being a great option now for people less accustomed to the older games, but might still want to give it a shot. The modern controls and modern UI really do help out here. Anyway, thanks to everyone on screen now who supports me on Patreon. If you want to support beyond subscribing, then that is going to be the best way to do so. Also, if you want to see more renewing of older games, then I think you should check out this video on screen now. See you over there.